I think Melbourne would have been the only protest city in the world that happened on that day that turned to violence.
Ours was pretty extraordinary. I was there that day. I was in the kettle that we then broke out of. And of course, the media then were at pains to show the images of the protesters attacking the police and pushing through the line as though we'd walked up to a police line and then just launched ourselves at them. What had actually happened was for an hour and a half, we'd been marching around away from the police, turning corners every chance we could to avoid a confrontation. And then finally, they got us at both ends. We marched down basically a box canyon, and not the best place for us to have marched, but there's no organizers for these protests because they're illegal. So it's just kind of the crowd making decisions. And we marched down there, and the cops were waiting for us at one end and were behind us at the other. And once they'd trapped us, because of what had happened previously in Melbourne with kettling and people being kept in the sun for hours on end, and there's a heartbreaking story that was shared with me earlier this week. A man was there with his wife when they got kettled on Cup Day in Melbourne. So I'm jumping back to an earlier protest now. They were held there for hours in the sun, and his wife was pregnant. And so he drew attention to that, and eventually the police let her out. She was feeling faint. She was feeling quite poor by the time they actually finally let her out. And a week later, she miscarried. And that was the consequence of having been held in that for so long. And, all of the protesters had that in the back of our minds. The police were not kind to us when we let them take control. And so that's why there were a number, and I was near the front, but I wasn't part of that initial push that just went, no, we're not doing it again. We're not standing here in the sun waiting for the cops to come in and crack us over the head with a truncheon and drag us off to do a bunch of paperwork. We're just going to push through. And it was immediately after that, we pushed through one end, and it was the senior sergeant. I'm led to believe the person in charge on the ground that day, the most senior person involved in that particular little moment of that day in that area, who then walked up and there's no other way to say it. He assaulted that woman, just threw her to the ground, pepper sprayed her along with another police officer, and then walked on like nothing had happened. Rightly, as you say, Craig, just images went around the world. People were horrified. I'm trying to find out what's going on with that, whether people have been stood down, whether charges have been laid. I haven't been able to get a straight answer on that just yet.